sells seashells on the seashore. Hey Sam, how you doing?
Oh, amazing. I am doing very well, man. I'm doing very, very well. I really hope we're going to have a good episode in here. This is actually peek behind the curtain. This is the second episode recording today, and I think there's going to be some. I think there's going to be some good stuff in this one too.
Hell yeah!
And we kind of touched on there was a few threads that we're going to continue from last episode to now.
Mm-hmm.
Today we're talking about DM preparation.
Gosh,
and this is going to be a lot of the mechanical bits of DMing, the organizational bits, which people don't always find fun. We're going to also talk about the flavors and a few different things about sort of nuances. I think nuances would be the way I describe it, DMing, because there's quite a lot of nuances.
Yes. Oh my gosh, my chair. I'm all right. I'm all right. There is a lot of nuances between styles. I'd love to talk about styles today as well. People have the beauty of TTRPGs is every single person that plays them, player or DM, has just such a different, way of coming at it. So it'd be interesting to kind of talk about the ways that we've seen and experienced, and hopefully people out there are like that and they can find some solace and find some stuff to learn.
I'm gonna immediately just riposte what you just said and say, what is your DM style? I'm going to throw it. Riposte.
Okay, my DM style. Minimalistic is how I'm going to phrase it. Very minimalistic. It's a lot of mind palacing, a lot of frantic. If I'm not terrified while I'm DMing, it's not going right for me. I use the fear that my house of cards could possibly crumble at any single moment to fuel me to make the right decisions. Is my stance on DMing. Yeah, yours, Sam?
I like that. I really, really like that. I know what you mean. Mm-hmm. I know what you mean. I definitely thrive on the chaos sometimes. I'm a real blank sheeter. I love a blank sheet.
Here we go.
Dangerous.
Yeah. It's dangerous.
It's dangerous. And what I found interesting is, I know we've talked about this before. I'm not sure if it was on the podcast, it was just us having a chat. Players find the blank sheet DMing really dissatisfying. Players think of it as like they've seen something they shouldn't see.
Yeah.
I think that the times where I've mentioned it, no one's gone to me, I hate that. But when I've said, I'm blank sheeting it, or I've said afterwards, oh, wow, that was really cool, guys. I didn't know where that was going. A bit of a blank sheet sort of thing. You always get a bit of a reaction. And you've mentioned this before about where people seem to think that, or some players, I'm generalizing, but some players seem to think that if a story event or situation was pre-written by the DM, it is in some way better than if it was improvised in the moment.
Yeah, I would agree with you. I actually think what that is a bit like acting on the stage. It's a suspense of disbelief. Is that what they call it? So people like to believe you're totally in power and you're totally in control and everything's thought of. They like that. There's a security and safety in that, I think. And when they go, oh, you were just making up, they're like, oh, that somehow is not as impressive. But I actually think it's more impressive. DMs who DM a lot will know actually it's more impressive to not have anything and be able to make the episode seem like you've planned everything out. But I think for players, you feel a bit like maybe you've been like, oh, you've just been led along, or that you as a DM haven't been putting in that amount of work that we expect to see DMs do. So there is a bit of like oh, okay. So I actually like to keep that mystique. And it's interesting you say that because I don't tell people if I'm blank sheeting it. I don't. And I do just kind of go, wow, that was really thought out. And I go, yep, it was. Because I have had that reaction before. I have had that kind of like, oh.
Yeah. I fully, I've definitely had that. And I think it comes down to something we spoke about before of the reactive versus proactive DMing. And players, I think, seem to think that being a proactive DM and having plans for everything and contingency plans and you put this in motion, blah, 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 X episodes ago. and that's great. Like we spoke about prophecies. It's important to have laid the prophecy out for it to then come to fruition later. That is a proactive. But the reactive element is knowing when to tie in the prophecy, because it could be you have there's a sort of town madman who's whispering under his breath, and you catch a tiny glimpse of what he says, and he mentions a fragment of the prophecy. That is a reactive thing. You didn't plan that out. It's just something you thought of in the moment because there was a town madman and it seemed right. A mural on the wall. Things like I'm a big fan of the murals. I really love it. It's such a good. You can be like, look at this scene in ancient history, and you can just go, look, this is a significant moment, guys, and then everyone has to go, wow, so significant. And I like doing that.
I've got you.
Really like doing that. Yeah, I gotcha. But I think reactiveness in DMing is so important, and I think that's why I like the blank sheet sometimes. Not all the time, definitely not all the time, but sometimes, because it allows you to pick up on what your players want to do, what they like, and you make things for them. Now, there is a prerequisite for that, which is you have to have buy-in from your players. Do not try a blank sheet if your players aren't bought in, because that is a recipe for a dud episode. 100%, because you won't have any threads. They won't be pulling, and you'll just be lost in this weird sort of dissatisfaction.
It happens. It really does. And that is the kind of gamble you're playing. And I liked your view on the proactive and reactive. And I would actually say that I'm a bit of a blend of the both. I would say I'm proactive on a campaign scale, and I'm reactive on an episode scale. So I keep the proactive for the campaign. I'm always thinking about what is happening, what's going on, how I'm going to tell the story. And I'll come to how I do my notes in a minute. But then episode to episode, I'm so reactive. I actually think DM, we've talked about this before, lives in that state of reactiveness, picking up on what your players are doing and morphing into that for them to make them enjoy the story. So I would say reactive episode to episode, proactive across the scale. That's how
Good.
I like
that. I like that. I think I'm a DM that's filled with self-doubt. As a person, I think I'm filled with self-doubt, and I think I spend a lot of my time considering my own campaigns, picking my own story apart, and going, oh, the players aren't going to like that. That's going to be boring. Oh, that's kind of lame. That piece doesn't fit. Why did I make that choice early on? And I do a lot of that self-doubt, self-criticism sort of thing, which I often shed in an episode. When I go into that flow state of pure reactivity, where I'm going, I know in my back pocket there's a few things that could happen. And so I tried one recently, actually. So we had an episode. The party were going to this place to free this, like going to this world I'd call Angmar because I pitch from Tolkien all the time.
What? You like Tolkien? That's wild to me. How am I finding this out now?
I was about to say we didn't mention Tolkien last episode, and then I realized we did.
Definitely
the whole Aragorn thing. Like,
I wonder how many episodes we have mentioned Tolkien. Probably every single episode.
I think we actually literally every time. Yeah. I think I've mentioned the Balrog multiple times.
Oh yeah.
Because why wouldn't you do that?
Why wouldn't you? It's a Balrog of Morgoth, Sam.
Yeah.
Come on.
Exactly. Now, with
Have you lost your trail?
Gone, yeah. I've lost my trail.
See, the Balrogs have taken us again.
It's too distracting.
We were talking producer. Do you remember where we were?
We're calling in help.
Evac. If not, we can just grab onto something else. We were talking. What about talking about a bit about like DM styles and how, because we've had some interesting, we've been playing with some interesting DMs recently and things like people playing in different ways. Have you got anything on that?
Yes. So one thing I noticed was really cool. So one of our friends recently did her first DMing, which was really cool, and it really showcased her skills as a player and as a person. I think as a creative, she did an absolutely brilliant job of including poems. This is something that comes up a lot in her play, When she's playing, she always has like a crazy cool poem, and she's playing this kind of like nature druid lady, and there was always these cool poems coming out, these great turns of phrase, and she used those as kind of plot points in her like episode we played, and I really liked that, and I think it's really important as a DM to be able to identify your strengths and your weaknesses.
Yes.
So if I look at it for myself, I think I find on the spot RP easier than some other people do. I find that quite easy. I find it really fun, stimulating.
Yeah, me too.
I find encounter design really fun if I'm stimulated by it. When sometimes I think it's easy in 5th edition to get lured into every fight has a win and a lose condition. The win condition is you kill the boss. The lose condition is the boss kills you. And it's so binary. And I like playing around with that of going, you have a different goal. You've got to stop the ritual. You're not going to kill the boss, but you've got to stop the ritual. That can be really fun. And it's about playing to your strengths. And I think she played to her strengths really well with poems. Puzzles can be a really good thing if you really like planned out puzzles. I've done them quite a few times. I really like them. I know that's something you aren't as comfortable with puzzles, isn't it?
I think because puzzles are, once again, that proactive side of you're making something. I struggle with that. I really do. I find my best ideas come to me in that lightning bolt form of inspiration. I do find, but that also has its pluses and cons, because if the lightning bolts of inspiration aren't striking, then I'm in a dastardly place, basically. But yeah, I find it's interesting. It once again comes to what you want out of the game. For me, I love storytelling, and I love that fast-paced RP and combat and the pulling towards a singular goal, so I don't explore a lot of stuff of kind of puzzles and working things out, but it is such a facet of the game that I love exploring through playing, because it really is such a change of pace. You've definitely put a lot of puzzles into, especially early Cyberpunk as well. And I always have fun. It's interesting because I find with puzzles as well, it actually starts to work on the player's mind instead of the character, because you end up my guys maybe a slightly dumber character, maybe a barbarian or something. I haven't put stuff into intellect. Do I then play that I don't understand the puzzle, and I end up having to sit out of the puzzle for half an hour while everyone solves the puzzle? Or do I involve myself as Connor and use my own intellect to be a part of the fun and play? So I find what puzzles and stuff kind of knocks into that a bit, and I wonder how you've done that for your puzzles, how you've broached that.
I think it's exactly that. I think I like giving you guys something to do, not necessarily your characters. I think that can be really fun. And some people take it that their character comes up with their idea, comes up with their solution, and that's great and that's really cool. Some people approach it as me, the player, is trying to solve the puzzle. I really like puzzles because I think it's such a change of situation. Where you've gone from, okay, you always put puzzles in dungeons, really, don't you? It's classic. You need to get through this door, but you can put them in other places too.
Temples, things come into my mind of anything that you want to pacing. Once again, we've come across this pace. Any way where you want to slow that pacing down a little bit. I mean, actually, saying that, you can make your puzzles you can put a time limit on them. Sand's rising in the room and you're going to drown in the sand or something. You can do these type of things to make the puzzle more intense, but I do find that it's different, isn't it? It's a different experience, so therefore changing the tempo and the pace of what's happening.
And yeah, exactly. And playing with those things, playing with those toys. And if your players don't like it, that's fine. Like, we've got a player, Nick, who the first time I gave a puzzle, he went, I absolutely loved that. He was like, that was one of my favorite moments. And then I thought, well, okay, my players told me explicitly he loves that, so I would be a bad DM if I didn't make sure that appears again, because he loves doing it.
Yeah.
And that's really fun. And one thing I really liked is putting riddle puzzles is a classic one I do, which is you've got to solve the riddle. And there was a whole thing where our most intelligent character of the party didn't actually get any of the riddles. And that was a whole funny bit of RP, because just the player didn't get him that time. It has got many since, but just didn't get in that time. And that becomes an old RP thing. People going, "Oh well, our smartest character Solomon didn't get any," And then the next time Solomon's going, "Okay, I'm gonna get this written," and they're really on it, and that could be really fun. It could be really fun. It does take some prep. It does take a little bit of prep, but it could be as simple with a puzzle like that. It could be as simple as you Googling cool riddles.
Yeah, that's so true.
It could be as easily as stealing the riddles from The Hobbit. That, honestly, I have done it, and it works a treat.
It works a treat.
Works a treat. And
don't be afraid to use resources. I think there's so much resources out there. The community around TTRPGs are amazing people, and some people just make stuff for people to use in their games. We see it everywhere. People just creating stuff and go, please use this, have fun. Great community for that.
Yeah, exactly. And just like you say, use what people enjoy. And if you read a book. If you read a book about something different and there happens to be this cool puzzle, or you watched an Indiana Jones film, they're full of booby traps. If you want to put booby traps in your game, put booby traps in your game. People are expecting it as well. You go into a dungeon or a lost temple or something, you're expecting darts to come out the wall. You're expecting the rolling boulder. You're expecting the acid pit,
the emotional promise of a dungeon, as you would say. Exactly. You're expecting certain archetypes to show themselves when you enter certain places. Yeah, exactly. You're right.
Now the producer, very thankfully, thank you, producer, has rewritten what I forgot. So I'm going to circle back to what I forgot. Yeah, talk about reactive DMing, and you guys were kind of went to this place. You were siphoning this power out to bring back this character called the Oracle. And you'd made her this little statue to kind of hold her power, this sort of effigy. And whilst that power was being sucked out, I thought to myself, and I asked this question to myself, something's going to happen here. Not quite sure what, but something's going to happen. Could be a combat, could be something else.
Did you feel the fret was too low? Is that what sparked that? Was it
it was interesting.
Or
it was
your
interesting.
pacing?
It was something one of the...
Yeah, what triggered
it's interesting. One of the players said to the party, "We're idiots if we think nothing's going to happen." And I went, "Interesting. You say that. Yeah. Okay. All right." And then that's the thing is you earwig and you listen. You go, "Oh, well, that's what one of the players is saying. So that's really interesting." And they did it in RP as well. It was Nick said that in RP. And it was really good. And I was like, "Oh, okay, something is going to happen. Not sure what it is." And I was thinking, okay, the power's being sucked out. What entities would be able to sense this level of power being sucked out? It's a big, juicy amount of magical power. And I've got this Baba Yaga figure called the Crone, who's the god of magic, and she's actually she's an antagonist at the moment. She's not the BBUG, but she's a big bad. And I thought, oh well, she would be able to sense across the galaxy some level of power being opened up, and she'd want a piece. And that was a really cool moment. I just threw her in. And I am an experienced DM, so I was able to basically, I had an idea of what she'd be able to do, and I fluffed it at the moment.
Yes.
Because you just go, okay, if you're not as experienced DM or as confident, then that may be too much to throw in like a part of a boss fight without really very much prep is a scary thing. But you said something to me once, which I really liked, which is you were kind of like, you've got to kind of take risks with boss fights. And sometimes they can pay off really well. And that one paid off so well because she turned up, she scared them, she slapped them up, and they did. And it was really, really cool. And it was completely a blank sheet.
Yeah, wow.
And it worked. Like a treat, it worked.
Something I picked up on you saying there was asking questions to yourself as a DM. I think that's core to reactive DMing. They said, we'd be crazy if something wasn't going to happen. And then you said to yourself, what could happen? Who could feel this? And you started instantly asking yourself questions. And because you've been playing in this world, DMs, if you're playing in this world, it will naturally come to you because you know your world, because you've been playing it 4 hours a week, every week for, I don't know what your schedules are, but that's mine. And it ends up, you know it. So you ask those questions and ask them in your brain and things will come to you. And then you'll have something to throw in. Yeah, I love that. I think that's really important. Amazing.
100%. And I wrote in the notes for this something called like a cornerstone event. Now you used a different term and of story beats,
Yeah.
of sort of the moments that kind of almost have to happen or will be happening at some point.
Mm-hmm.
And it can fall into the reactive or the proactive camp. You can have events where you go, well, I know at some point they will end up. So I had one where big city, you guys went to this big city and you had learned that this city was going to be under attack during an eclipse by these vampires. And you knew that ahead of time.
Mm-hmm.
So all of us knew, like you're saying, the emotional, what was it said? The emotional investment, emotional promise. You guys knew you would be defending the walls of that city against vampires at some stage. You knew that. I knew that. We all bought in. So when that came, it was a really satisfying moment.
Yeah.
Now, that was going to happen. But if you decided to go somewhere else, it would have happened. But maybe, I'm making this hypothetical, maybe if you turn up too late, the battle's almost already won. And instead of holding the walls, you guys have got to try and retake the city from the vampires.
Yes.
Like, there's ways to do a cornerstone event. Like, for me, it was the Siege of Emberdan. You can do that both ways. You can be the attacker, you can be the defender, you could discreetly sneak in and kill the boss. There's loads of ways you can run a cornerstone event like that. And don't be afraid as a DM of adjusting where that happens. I think that's good DMing. Because your players do stuff.
Would love for you to explain to me what your cornerstone what was that you said? Cornerstone events. Could you explain to me what these cornerstone events are?
Yeah, absolutely. So I think with a cornerstone event, for me, it's like a must-have at some stage. I rarely have a cornerstone event take place at the exact time and place the exact time I'd pre-specified. But usually there's a location. So like I say, the Siege of Emberdan was always going to happen in Emberdan. When you turned up to do it is up to you, and that's where you let player agency be a massive aspect of your campaign. Is players make choices. You have an organic world. Their choices. If you guys decide to go to a different city and save a different city, you can have some allies from that city who might join you, but because you guys, the biggest heroes, weren't on the walls, that city fell.
Yeah.
And now you've got to retake it with your newfound allies. There's a consequence and a benefit to that.
Yes.
But they're must-haves. And you can maneuver where they happen in the timeline.
Yes.
Provided it doesn't mess up
your timeline.
Later events. Sometimes things have to happen in an order.
Yeah.
But you can move it around a bit.
You can
move it around, and I think that's good DMing. So that's how I decided cornerstone event.
So that's really interesting, because I actually that thing of kind of ideas or events that you want to happen is actually leads in quite nicely to how I prep my episodes. So I'll go through a little bit now of like how I actually will sit down and I'll prep. So first things first, I'll get a blank page, I'll sit down, pencil in hand. First things first, I go through my characters. I think I go through the world first. So I say like, what is happening in the storyline? What are my bad guys doing? What are my good guys doing? What is shifting in the world? Is there anything I want? Has the world been quiet for too long? Has no massive events happened recently? Then I should be throwing in something now, pacing again. If it's dipped for a while, let's have a world event. Or we had a world event last week. Let's let the world dip off, and I'm now going to focus on the players instead. So I'll write out things that I want to happen like that, and they will never be specific. They will always be really vague. Next part of Galgatorex's plan will come to fruition. I may know what that part is, I may not, I may be waiting for a reactive thing to happen. Then I go on to the players, and I will try and find something interesting for each one of those players, depending on where they are in their stories, depending on what they need. So I'll go, Siren, my desert wizard, has seen a prophecy, but it's been a while since he's had maybe he's doubting, he hasn't seen a vision in so long. Okay, then I write down vision for a siren. And then maybe I'll put some ideas. I want it to portray the BBG. I want it to show the calamity that could be befalling this certain place that I want to put my next cornerstone event. And then I'll just write that a little bit out, but I never block it out in full prose text, free verse. Won't do it. It's always really vague. It's more about giving me stimulus to bounce off while I'm reacting. And I'll do that for each character. So I have a little something, and sometimes they can be really small, like because they've had something last episode, or they need to digest. So I'll give them something a little bit smaller. But I'll do one for every character, and then I'll look at that, and I'll go: is there going to be a big fight? Am I going to need a boss or something? Because normally I don't do little fights in my campaigns because we're playing such high fantasy. It's always a giant big boss. We're always fighting bosses. So I go: is there going to be one in this episode? Not that I can see. In that case, I'm blank paging it, and then I'll go, my boss will be reactive, and I'll go, could this boss do? And I'll quickly draw stuff down in the moment, or I'll make everyone take a break and then draw it out. Or I will have a boss planned, something that's happening, and I'll write the boss out on the side, and then if I'm nice and feeling generous, I'll put some magic items that boss might drop. How they tie, and I liked it. We will talk another episode about making magic items and how to tie magic items into characters, because what I really love about magic items in fantasy is Excalibur, your legendary weapons, the weapons that have their own mythos and lore around them, and I'd love to do an episode on that. But that's basically how my session looks like. That is how it'll be: one piece of paper, and it will have all that, and all I'm doing is giving myself stimuluses so that I can riff off them, basically, is how I would prep my things. I wonder if that's any difference to you, Sam, and how you would do it.
I've gone through a lot of iterations of this, actually. So my first campaign, I wrote scenes, which was a really erroneous choice. I look upon it. On reflection, it really wasn't the right way of doing it because it was so much more fixed. And I scrapped that. Changed completely.
Can we just talk about why it didn't work just a little bit for everybody listening, so they can why you found it wasn't working?
So easy to railroad people.
I see.
Because I have said this is scene 1, this is scene 2, this is scene 3. I can mix up the order, but these are going to happen, and it meant that I found myself forcing players into situations.
I get you.
Where I go, come over here, and it felt or like I'd. Maybe less sort of railroady, where I'd kind of draw them to a place by going, you see a mysterious man walk into this pub, and then they go, oh, mysterious man, cool NPC, must go in there, and then they do it. And even then, even though they had an option, it was always that thing where I felt like I'd been hard done by if they didn't go in. Whereas I really changed that because it wasn't the way I didn't get a lot out of that.
You were just feeling that it wasn't playing.
It just wasn't.
They were losing agency. The players were not reacting in a positive way, I guess. Yeah. Okay.
It didn't feel organic. So I changed that. Beginning of Cyberpunk Campaign 2, where I'd gone through a bit of a kind of evolution as a DM, where I'd done a lot of work. Watched a lot of videos. I'd listened to a lot of people talk about it. I'd really reflected a lot, and I tried instead to have like similar to what you do of a player's thing, of the player thing. But what I started to find was I found it really hard because I was writing quite concrete things, whereas you have gone for the vague stimulus concept of they need to have a precious moment. I was going for that. This was the precious moment, and it was a similar thing where again I was writing out too much in detail. So now I have a think about what's happening in the world, similar to you, kind of the macro scale stuff. What I might think could happen in the episode at points, maybe a topic that the characters talked about last episode that they'd like to explore, and then I might write down something that's going to happen for them or a little motif I want to play with. It's a part of my DMing I want to get better at, is the episode planning, because I find myself with a full-time job kind of defaulting to very, very minimal. And it can work so well, or it can be not satisfying. And so I'm definitely in my own phase of improving that, I'd say.
I would agree with you, Sam. For me as well, I think the reason why I do a lot of this stimulus and reacting stuff is because I have, I work, and I do other life stuff. Like, I love D&D. It's such a huge part of my life. But that sometimes you don't have time. Sometimes you've had a busy week. Sometimes your other life responsibilities have called upon you. And I think knowing how to do those reactive plays, those reactive things. It's really. I wonder if I could grab. I wonder if
I've got my notes here.
You got
as
your
well.
notes?
Grab your notes as well.
Yeah,
we're gonna do.
Let's do
We're gonna
a-
find
I've
our notes,
got
people. So
something
if you hear
up
some
here.
rustling and bustling, you know what's been going on. We've been notebooking.
That's just the boss. That one. I'm sure our editor can cut this down. I'll go grab my things. I'm here with my notes that I had before the podcast started because I'm prepared like that.
Amazing.
They magically appeared on my desk.
I
Amazing.
discovered something I'd forgotten I do, which actually I think is a really good thing. I really like in my notes is I take notes on places quite a lot.
Right.
So, for instance, we went to this cliffside castle called Highfell.
Yeah.
And I wrote in my notes cliffs, lagoon, and crags. Forest on cliffs.
Ooh.
Sea recruits climbing the cliff. And then I've mentioned an NPC who's going to be there called Gaspar, suit of Seleth armor, sword of black obsidian.
Yes.
And then I mentioned Lowfell, the town under the fortress, and then Pete, the guard of Lowfell. So I've got a few little pieces, the stimuli, a few pieces of stimuli.
Yeah.
With. Yeah, I think that's good.
Yeah.
That's good.
So let's say this is like a meeting sheet here. We're having a massive council. I've got rebuilding of the keeper, which is a god. Sometime during this episode, we're going to rebuild a god. Each god has a role to play. That's one of my notes. Must leave sword for crown. There you go. So it's kind of like there. But when the faithful come, I will not leave them alone. That's actually a quotation mark. I do that sometimes for my NPCs. So I'll write out a little line or phrase of theirs, and that is kind of the core of what they are or what they believe or what they're believing in that episode. So we're like, we need to talk to this person. They're a king and they're going to help us in the fight. And I write in quotation marks, like a little sentence, I am worried for the stability of my kingdom. And that's the king saying that. And I can put that through my mind. So when we're having they come to the king, we need your help. He's going, but I'm worried about the stability of my kingdom, kind of thing. So then you've got just a little line to play off, I think, which is quite interesting.
I think it's a good shout. Having little moments, lines, visions, kind of pre-written out a bit can be really helpful, I think.
I think visions for sure. Like stuff like that, prophecy stuff, make sure you're...
So... on terms of your quotations, things like that, do you have any examples of where you've used that in an episode and that's kind of spurned things on, maybe? Have you got anything floating in your mind?
It spurred things on. Interesting. So, not the quotation marks, because they're more of the NPC's mind state, and that allows me to be reactive because I'm just stepping into their shoes. The stuff that does help spur things on would be the stuff like the visions, writing stuff down, or going. So it's hard to pull it to my mind, but something like you're talking to a king, using the king motif again, but it's not.
It's okay.
I don't want this to go well, or I wouldn't write that, but I'd be like, the king is not going to allow this to happen. If last episode someone was like, we're going to get the king on our side, and they're really like, yeah, it's going to be easy, then you go, okay, here's a point of contention. The king's actually horrible, and then you're not going to get them on side, and then it becomes, how do we find a way of getting this person on side? And then you're going, okay, I've actually created a conflict here. There's an episode here because I've managed to. They think something's going to be easy. It's not easy. We're going to have an episode here. Which also, I mean, could dishearten your players if they're like, oh, we expect this to be easy because we want to go on to something else. then I would say maybe play it easy because your players are excited to get to the other place. And sometimes I do speed track them to get them there. But sometimes it's good to pull them back and be, actually, no, you're not going there for a moment. I'm going to keep you here and we're going to do something like this because I'm going to get you out of your comfort zone.
I like doing a blend of that with NPCs, where an NPC isn't initially aligned with them. Is I go, in my head, he's not aligned with you now. They're not aligned with you now. But you could persuade them. If you guys do, and one thing I have a real pet peeve about this. I really hate the let's persuade the king. Okay, bard, roll persuasion.
Oh yeah,
it's so lame. It's like no. If you're going to persuade the king, you guys have got to give reasons why the king's going to back you. You can't just roll a dice and consult your character sheet. That's not good.
It depends what type of game you're playing, though. I will caveat that. Because if you're playing a game where you don't like, I think it's because me and Sam are so passionate about RP, though. I really do think RP is where games come alive. I love acting. I love being here. Why not act out a scene in a throne room where you're trying to convince a monarch to... Why not act that? That's incredible. But some people don't enjoy it and they do just want the role. But I'm with you. In my games, but I make that very clear from the get-go. I want everyone to get involved, have fun. You can still do the roles if you want. If let's say you're not comfortable with RP and maybe you're stammering and you're not getting the full character, I will still allow you to have a role to see if you pass, because I'm not gonna penalize you for not being experienced in RP. But a lot of my RP, I will just go, please talk to me. Let's try and convince this character.
So I have a midpoint between full RP and rolling the dice. And the midpoint I give is I say to people, I've done this playing D&D with kids before, which is third person. My character says, King, don't you think we could do more for your kingdom? If you aren't familiar with RPing that, you can still have an idea. What are you trying to achieve?
Yeah.
You can still do that. And even you can take it even further back and say, my character highlights for the king a battle where the king was heroic and maybe they could live that life again.
That's really good.
You can live it like that, and then you can see how effective that was by rolling the dice, and that's okay.
Yeah.
So I think there's a spectrum there. We're definitely on the RP side, which is give me some actual words why this works. And sometimes you can do the Brennan Lee Mulligan instant nat 20. Where you can just go,
I love doing that.
That was so good. Your speech was so good. The king is instantly, you've natural 20. The king now loves you. The king's on your team.
Yeah.
Done.
Yeah, I didn't do that before you introduced me to that just now. And it's good. It is good. It's once again another way of rewarding your players as well. I'm actually really fixated on that at the moment, that like rewarding the players. I think it just helps getting them engaged, keeping them there. Get the carrot, keep the carrot out on the 100%. Stick, keep them coming through. There's reward. No, don't be the stick. You don't want to be that. It's all carrot. It's all carrot.
100%. That's one thing I definitely have found, is that I'm much more. I find the thing where you have to go, no guys, that doesn't work. I hate that part of DMing.
Yeah,
I find that really difficult. Because I hate bumming my friends out.
Yeah,
I like my friends to be happy. That's just the way I am.
I love bumming my friends out. I'm just like, no.
It's just, but it's about playing to your strengths.
Yes,
just like we were saying earlier, you've got to play to your strengths. You've got to know what you're good at. And I think with any DM operation, the key ingredient is player agency, which I mentioned earlier, but I want to circle back to. Which is, you've got to let your players make organic decisions. You've got to let their decisions affect your world. Otherwise, what's the point in them being there? What's the point of playing if the choice you made doesn't have effects?
They're not here to read a story. They're here to play D&D. Yeah.
And something you've definitely taught me is that you should almost always, unless it's a really terrible decision or a blatantly brilliant decision, there should almost always be a give and a take. And in terms of, there's a good thing that happens as a result of your choice and a bad thing that happens as a result of your choice. I mentioned this earlier in terms of the Siege of Emberdam. If you chose to go to a different island and help them instead, you would have allies that could help you in that battle, but you arrive to the battle later.
Actions have consequences. Actions have consequences. And that builds your player agency. If they go, we're not going to go to Emberdam, we're going to go recruit allies, and nothing happens at Emberdam, they go, brilliant. That our decision of leaving there actually didn't affect at all. We're all on the green. Our choices don't matter. But if you go, well, actually, you're doing this. I love instilling that in my games, that there's no right choice. And that really helps player agency, because then you end up going on what they think is the best. You go, here's the choice, you'll get good and bad. Here's another choice, you'll get good and bad. Here's another choice, you'll get good and bad. And then they have to ethically weigh up what is the right thing. And that really pulls characters out of people, because they have to make these really tough decisions of like, right, we're going to go help these people, but that means these people are going to get left alone. Is there any way we can help those people from over there? No. Oh, can we send someone to like support them? And it just adds this kind of, they start to plan, they start to think about your world more, and they go, well, my agency is obviously very important, because if I make decisions, bad things or good things can happen.
It's so key. It's so key. And that idea of things carry on even if you're not there.
Yes.
I love that personally, because it feels, as a player, I love that so much because it feels so real. And the way to do that as a DM, because you might not be mechanically comfortable with how to do that, and really it's what we were saying earlier, which is ask yourself questions. I sit down and I go, well, the party didn't go where I expected. They're not going to the siege, so how will the siege go? Well, it's not going to go as well as it would have done if the party were there, because they're down the greatest heroes of the age. So that siege is probably not going to go so well.
Yeah.
Or they rebuff the enemy, but they're still locked in the siege, and a major NPC is critically wounded.
Yes.
And then everyone goes, no, that NPC lost an arm. And they're like, they've got gangrene on the table. Like, that's horrible. You know, you
should have been here.
Yeah, exactly. And I did one actually recently in Cyberpunk, which was, you guys were like, we've got to go to this place. We've got to free the Oracle. We've got to get her into the effigy, like I was just discussing. And this NPC called the Sea Lord was like, you can do that, but you guys are the generals of this army. We have a massive armada, and you are like, you're leaving us bereft of leadership. And you guys were like, well, there's nothing I can say to that except, yeah, you're right. We are doing that.
Good luck.
We have to do it. We have to do it.
Yeah.
And he was like, okay, you have to do it. That's fine. I trust you. But just so you know, there will be consequences. There will be consequences. Yeah. There will be consequences. And I think that's
a really good way of putting that in there as well, of just having an NPC saying there will be consequences, and just reaffirming that to players. I think if they're playing a campaign long enough with those type of choices, they'll understand that things are. And I sometimes find that if you do that type of thing, so if you did that and then they come back and the fleet's in complete disarray, and then they go, oh yeah, we were the leaders and we've done that, oh, they should have gone, we should have thought about that, and then your characters start to get a bit like, they don't think about anybody else. But if you actually have your NPCs remind them of certain stuff, and you know, that's a good way of doing it. It's a good way. I like it. Yeah.
Now, in terms of DM preparation, I think I've kind of said most of what I wanted to say. Is there anything you wanted to add on this piece before we sort of roll this one up?
No, I've gone over how I would prep about my sessions, how I think, you know, a blend of the kind of proactive and reactive is really important, and how finding your own style, I think if anything they could take away, is finding your own style is really important with DMing. You just need to find what works for you and what works for the players at your table. Remember, you're all playing together. You're not catering just to your players. Also do the things that you like. Keep that nice balance in there, and you can't go wrong. And just grow. Like you said, when you have your metamorphosis of just going and learning and growing, if you love it and you want to tell good stories, go learn. Go ingest loads of stuff. There's so many talented people out there who are talking about so many great things, including us. but yeah, if you take away, that's what I would take away.
I think that's a really, really good summary. Like you say, I think you've got to respect your own wants, your own needs. If you want to do this specific thing, maybe your cornerstone event is you wanted to do a siege. You really wanted to do that. You want to do a wizard falling from a tower, something like that.
Mm-hmm.
it might not happen where you wanted it to or where you expected it to, but find a wet place for it, unless it's like really against the grain of where the campaign's going. But as I always say, enjoy yourself. Just play D&D. Just have fun.
Just play
or whatever game you want to play.
Yeah, whichever TTRPG you're playing, just enjoy it. And don't be afraid to make mistakes and have conversations around the table about what everybody expects and wants from it.
100%.
Yeah. So Sam, we're this is it. The end of a season.
Yeah.
The end of season 1.
It is an amazing thing. We've done 6 episodes, and I'm really, really happy with them. I feel like we progressed through doing this as well.
Yeah, for sure.
And actually, that's kind of what we want to talk to you about here, listener, is we are ending this season because we have some really, really exciting plans for our next season. Some really exciting plans indeed. And we just want to thank everybody for listening, for the feedback we've received from friends, family, listeners, the support of our amazing producer, Runa, who's really been the guiding light to our lonely vessel upon the high seas.
Bat signal to our Batman.
The bat signal, exactly, yeah, exactly that. Exactly that.
I don't know if
Connor looks good in spandex as well.
Yeah, it's so true. And Sam looks great with those nipples on the bat suit.
I'm that guy.
And that's what you can expect from season 2. We're bringing nipples back to the bat suit, everybody. No, we've got some things planned, and maybe we won't divulge them just yet. Keep them in the back. Keep you excited. Keep the audience wanting more. Isn't that like how you do showbiz? Because we're in tune with showbiz now.
Yes, my drama teacher always used to say, "Less is more." He always just used to say that. I never quite understood what it meant, but now I totally understand.
I don't know if that's an antithesis to the nipples on the batsuit. I hate to bring it back again, but less is more. That's a lot more. That is a lot. That's 2 more. Maybe we need to lose that.
Okay, so no nipples on the batsuit and no abs.
No abs.
No cape though.
Yeah, you can't be the Cape Crusader without the cape. Oh wait, season 2, Sam. We're going to talk about season 2. The batsuit is distracting us too much. Season 2. We are so excited. We have learned so much. We have, It's an interesting thing, isn't it? Learning to podcast and to chat and to relax and be able to kind of have a conversation and talk about something that we're so passionate about. And the kind of semi-imposter syndrome of can we talk about this as just kind of average run-of-the-mill DMs who make up wild stats and crazy boss fights and ridiculous things and try to tell stories in a kind of adult basement variety way. But it's been so much fun. It has been loads of fun. And I think season 2 is onwards and upwards, right?
It is onwards and it is definitely upwards. Yeah, it's been a really amazing journey. A lot of fun to do with you as Connor as well. We do hang out all the time. And we've got other projects on the go too. But I'm really loving this project at the moment. It's really, really fun. It's super enjoyable. We get to talk about pretty much our favorite thing. And just hang out. And I'm also really glad that people enjoy it. We really want to hear from you, listener, as well. Our big push this coming season is listener interaction. Send us your questions. Drop us a like, drop us a follow, share what you see, share it and say, God, these guys suck. We hate them. Something like that. We welcome that sort of energy.
The old adage, all publicity is good publicity, right?
That's exactly it.
We should stoke a controversy. we should say something really out there about D&D or something. I don't like Critical Role. There we go. Oh no. I mean, I do, guys. Please put the pitchforks away. I'm sorry. Matt Mercer's great. It's all good. No, yeah. I don't like Matt Colville. Oh, sorry again. I'm sorry.
I can't abide that.
No, I'm sorry.
I'm ending this podcast. You have to retract that statement about Matt Colville. You have to.
I'm just trying to do publicity. No, great. How do you end this? How do you end a season? It's the first time I'm ending it.
I know how to end this.
Okay, go on, do it.
See you in season 2.